Hello, year 4. Today we're going to be looking at the properties of 3D shapes. We're also going to quickly look at 2D shapes as a quick recap. We're going to be thinking about lots of things to do with shapes today. Love shapes. The properties. Alright, so we've got some information here about the different parts of shapes, 2D and 3D. So on 3D shapes, we call certain parts faces. I'm going to show you everything that's on the slide and then draw on it because I don't want it to get confusing. There are the edges as well, which are very similar to the sides in 2D shapes. I'm going to show you in a second. And vertices is just a fancy word for corners. It's where the edges meet on a 3D shape, and they're where the sides meet on a 2D shape. Okay. Key features are also going to be featured in this next section. So if we're thinking about faces, we're going to do faces in this lovely colour here. Faces are these lovely flat sections on 3D shapes. So when you're saying, let's count the faces of a shape, you of course, because it's 3D, you can turn it and move it and pick it up. And it's those flat sides, but they're faces on 3D shapes, okay? So you might call them sides, but I like to think of them as a face, so like your cheeks, all right? The edges or sides, we're going to do in red. So the edges are these lovely bits where the faces meet. So they're the straight lines on a 3D shape. Those are your edges, okay? Those straight lines on a 3D shape. And on a 2D shape, they are, well, they're the sides, they're the edges. So there's usually, if they say number of sides, you would count each of these. So sometimes when you're counting them, you do them with a little line like this because it makes it quicker, okay? So I can see that this square here has 4 sides. This cube is going to take me a little bit longer if I'm doing the number of edges, because of course I would have to turn it round, but I can still do the lines through them in the same way to help me count them. Okay, but remember it rotates, so you have to imagine it with those other sides on the other side as well. Vertices and corners. So these are ones again that you should know. We've just spoken about them. Vertices are where the edges join, so they're where the edges come together into a point. I like to think of them as sharp, so if you think about the tip of the V is sharp. That's how I remember vertices is your corners. The same with lovely 2D shapes, it's where the sides meet rather than where the edges meet, because there aren't any edges on a 2D shape, so it's where the sides meet. So the key features, each section is going to have a little extra bit of information, and I'm going to add some information too to help it be a bit more interesting and help you remember certain things about them. But there are things like key feature of a square, all the sides are the same length. So it's also called a parallelogram or quadrilateral. Okay, so that's an interesting one. That's a key feature, it's really useful to remember. The same with the cube, all of the sides. Are they called sides on this? No, they're called edges. All of the edges are going to be the same length on a cube. All of the faces are the same size. Okay, so that will help you work out the number of sides and the number of faces and the number of edges and the number of vertices as you go along. So there's some key features for you. So let's try and find them for all of these fairly common and some uncommon 3D shapes as we go. Cubes have... Let's see, what do cubes have? 6 faces, 12 edges, 8 vertices, and edges that are all the same length. Oh, we've just talked about this. Sometimes the easiest way to find out about these is just by reading and memorizing. With cubes and dice, you'll remember they've always got 6 faces, because when you are rolling a dice, it's got 6 numbers on it. The 12 edges, that's 2 times 6, so it's a nice and easy way to remember that. 2 times 6, and the vertices are those corners. We know that a square is 4-sided. This is a top tip. This is another fun key feature. That was a terrible drawing, I'm sorry. But what that means is there are 4 corners on a square. So where all the edges meet, because they're going up and across, what you can imagine is that set of corners is just times by 2. Yeah, so you've got a face and a face. Otherwise, you end up recounting them. So we'd have to get rid of these lines and these lines, if you see what I mean. Okay, so I imagine that this is a square. It has a square face, but because it's a cube, we need to times it by 2 to work out the number of vertices. Okay. Fun fact, so you can make there are sort of tips and tricks for remembering these, but on cubes in general, on squares in general, it's going to be a multiple of 2. Let's keep going. Cuboid, we've had a chat about this one already. You can see that again it's got one square face and it's stretched out and it's got huge rectangular sides. Oh, sorry. They have 6 faces, so it's the same as a cube. They have 12 edges, the same as a cube, and they have 8 vertices, the same as a cube. The difference between a cuboid and a cube is the length of the sides. So the edges are not all the same length on a cube. The edges are the same length, the faces are the same size, and it'll have the same amount of corners. But on a cuboid, not all of the faces and not all of the edges are the same length because we've got rectangles and squares. Okay? Fun fact! But because it's basically a stretched cube. Rectangular prism. Ooh. So you can see the difference with this one already. Sometimes these can be cuboids. So if you've seen a rectangular prism, you go, oh, that's a cuboid. I can understand why. But the key fact is that usually cuboids have squares as their ends on one of their faces. And rectangular prisms are rectangles all the way over, but different size rectangle one way, different size rectangles the other. Okay? Rectangular prism. Rectangular prisms have 6 faces, 12 edges, 8 vertices. Familiar. Just like the dice, this is a 4-sided shape. So it's a 4-sided shape at its face. If you're thinking about the 2D shapes. So when you're thinking about 3D shapes, you always need to remember the 2D shapes that they're made of. And that's why you end up with 6 faces, 12 vertices, 12 edges, 8 vertices, because it's all about how they connect. Alright? And because you're just connecting things with 4 sides, that's how it ends up. Okay? So any 4-sided shape, it will have 6 faces, 12 edges and 8 vertices when it becomes a 3D shape. Alright? Sphere. Sphere is one of my favourite. I know it's quite a hard one to spell, so I'm just going to bring attention to it here. Here. Sphere. So that's like here, like the place, and the sp is actually the f sound here. Yeah? So when you're spelling it, be careful. It's a tricky one, but you'll get the hang of it. Spheres are perfectly round. Oh, and also it's not pronounced Sophia. No, it's sphere. Just a reminder, because it's one of those things. They're perfectly round, which means they kind of look like a circle if you squished them. They have no edges. Now on this picture it makes it look like an edge, but a sphere is not a sphere. A sphere is perfectly round like a ball, like a tennis ball or a bouncy ball, and they don't have any joins on them. So edges are a join, so it's where 2 of those bits, 2 of the faces meet. Since it's not really got any more than one face, it's literally one face all the way around, just wrapped around. Okay? So they've got no vertices, no sharp corners where edges meet because they have no edges, so they can't have any corners. So it's just one curved surface. That's one face. Okay? But of course, with this one, what's important to remember as well is the prisms have different numbers of corners, etc. So if we're thinking about the vertices, we've got 1, 2, 3 at this end, because the corners of a triangle, there are 3, which means we've got 1, 2, 3 on the other end. So just like with the square, we have 8 because it's a 4-sided shape. With the triangle, we've got 3 at either end, so we've got 6 altogether. Okay, so with prisms and cuboids, that's how that works. Alright, brilliant. Oh. Cylinders. Cylinders have, what do cylinders have, I imagine? They have two flat and circular faces. They do. Again, this here at the beginning, the sill, is to help us remember these circle shapes. Okay, so I always remember this psi sound here is the circle, and circle is spelled with a C as well. So if you remember cylinder as being spelled the same as circle, it will help you remember that. It also has a funky Y in it. Just remember that because it's cool. So it has two flat circular faces, and then again it's one curved surface that wraps all the way around the outside, and then it's got the two faces on the other side. So that's one face, and then there's two more faces, which means it has three faces altogether. Although it has edges, it only has two edges because it's only got two places where it's joined, but there are no vertices, so there are no sharp corners where all of the edges meet. Where the edges meet, it is rounded and curved, so there aren't sharp joins, alright? So a cylinder has three faces and two lovely edges, okay, but no vertices. Square-based pyramid. You can see this one has a square base. The bottom of it is square. The pyramid part refers to the triangular top. Okay, so pyramids are the ones with the triangles that join in one lovely huge vertice at the top. So I can see all of the corners of this shape from here, all of the vertices. I can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I know that we've got a square base, which means that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 faces, and then the face on the bottom. So that's 5 faces all together. Okay, so a square base, a square shape, we've looked at this already. 4 triangle faces that make a sharp point, lovely. So they're equilateral triangles usually. And then they have 5 faces altogether. They're not always equilateral triangles, but they are usually equilateral triangles. But sometimes, of course, you can get ones that are a bit more wonky in length. But if it's a pyramid, in general, you will have these key features, these key properties. 5 faces, 5 points. Okay, so this is a triangular base pyramid. They're also known as a tetrahedron, okay, which is just an exciting fun fact. A tetrahedra, so if you think tetra, again, is sort of links to triangle, and hedron you'll hear a lot in shapes that are 3D, has a 3-pronged base, so a triangle, and then a point at the top. So it's going to have 3 faces on the side, all made out of equilateral triangles probably, and an equilateral triangle on the bottom as well. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4 faces, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4 lovely spiky spikes as well, vertices. So you can see how that is very similar to our square base pyramid, which has 5 faces and 5 points. Our triangle base pyramid has 4 faces and 4 points. Okay, lovely. 6 edges. Woo! We could have done that with a little bit of counting. Again, we know that there's 3, and then there's going to be 3, 3, 3. Pentagonal prism. Pentagonal. Oh, I love the word pent. You might have heard of a pentagon. That's a lovely 2D shape that you already know. Pentagon all just means it has the shape of a pentagon in it somewhere. We can see here it is this face. A pentagon is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-sided shape. Pent means 5. Prism again refers to how it's sort of been stretched out, and it will have rectangular faces. Usually a prism will have rectangular faces attached to the face that's of a different shape. Okay, so pentagonal prisms have 7 faces. 1, 2, and then we add the 5 that go around the edge. And they have 2 pentagonal faces, so that's either end, and then they've got 5 rectangular faces. If we're thinking about the points, again, the vertices, we've got a 5 cornered shape. So it's got 5 corners, which means it's got 5 vertices at this end, and then we need to account for the ones that are at the other end too. So that means that's 10 vertices altogether for that one, okay? Lovely. 15 edges, yeah, so we've got 5, 5, and 5 at the other end. Cool. There you go, 10 vertices. Hexagonal prisms, hexagon, you will have heard of. Hex means 6. So that lovely word hex means 6. So if you hear hexagon, you know that that's a 6-sided shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If it's a hexagonal, that means it's being the hexagon is on it somewhere. It's being applied to the prism. So that's that shape there. And a prism means that it has rectangles on it as some of its faces, which we can see here. Hexagonal prisms have, let's have a look. I bet you can make some guesses about this one. They have 8 faces. That is because they have 6 around the outside, because it's a 6-sided shape. And then they have the 2 at either end. So it's got 8 faces. 2 hexagonal faces, yep, just like we just said, and 6 rectangular faces around the outside. They have 18 edges. 18, how? Let's work out how we worked out how it's got 18 edges. It's got 6 around the top, it's got 6 around the bottom, that makes 12, and then it's got 6 around the middle, so around the rectangles, and that will make 18 altogether. That's 3 times 6. Amazing. Good job, guys. So 12 vertices, again, that's because there's the 6 at the top where all of the corners join, and then there's 6 at the bottom where all of the corners join too. So that makes 12 altogether. Octagonal, I think we're seeing a theme here. Octagon is a 8-sided shape, and I like to remember octopus, octa, yeah, or octo we get as well. Same thing, but slightly differently said. Prism again just means it has rectangular sides. We know that the octagon is at the end here, and the prism is about the rectangular sides. I'm just going to show you this one. I feel like we've worked it out already. 10 faces, yep, so we've got 2 octagonal faces, and then around the middle we have 8 rectangular faces, and we have 24 edges altogether. That's because we've got 8 and 8 and 8, and then we've got 16 vertices because that one is just about where they join, so that's going to be the top and the bottom. So that's going to be your 8 and your 8. Okay. Octahedron. This is cool. You might have seen the tetrahedron earlier, which was the triangle bottom pyramid. The octahedron, I think you can guess how many sides it is. It's like a square base pyramid stuck to a square base pyramid. And we know that octa means 8. We know that oct means 8. It's like October. So if you're having a look at this, you can see the number of sides is going to be 8. We've just said 8, that's because it's got 4, 4, 4, 4. Yeah. 12 edges, that's about where it's joining. So it's your 4 times table. It's going to be the top bit, around the middle bit, and then around the bottom bit. So you've got 4, 4, 4. Okay. And then vertices, you've got your 4 in the middle, and then you've got 2 top and bottom. 6. Cone! I love a cone. Look at that. What a beautiful shape. It's got a circle on it. You know, a cone, imagine an ice cream cone. You don't need to go much further than that. It's got one curved face that has a vertice at the bottom, right at the tip. So you've got one vertice there. You've got 2 faces. It's just one face that's curved that wraps all the way around. One flat face with a circle. That's the top. One vertice or a vertex. That's the bottom. And one edge that goes all the way around, so it's one curved surface. So the edge is where these two join, so it's the join of the circle to the cone itself. Lovely. Your challenges today then. There are 2 activities for you today. They are not levelled. You need to try your best to do both of them. The first one is a naming game. Now this is about spellings. If you've watched this carefully, I might have highlighted some of the trickier spellings as we've gone. You know, oct, it means 8, hex means 6, pent means 5. These are key words when we're trying to work out the names of shapes. You should know how to spell square and circle and things like that by now, and they're going to come up in there. So the name game is a bit of a self spelling test to do with shapes 2D and 3D. And remember the word prism, that one's going to come up for you too. Just think about how they're spelled and try and hold them in your head and have a go. Practice any spellings that you are stuck on, because they do come in handy, they really do. Secondly, identify the properties of shapes. So those are the things we've just talked about. The properties are the faces, the edges, the vertices, okay? And then sometimes you'll have like a fun key fact that will help you remember those things. Try the familiar ones first. See if you can find the objects around your house to help you. Yeah, so you might have a cylinder, you might have a tin to help you out. I can see I've got a bit of a cylinder here. It's a bit uneven, but I can see it's got a circle at the top, a circle at the bottom, and the body is curved all the way around with no edges. So you can see it's a cylinder. Even though it's not, you know, a perfect cylinder, but it helps me to feel and see and move those shapes around. So have a look at them around your house. And the names often have hints, so just like I said, pent means 5, hex means 6, oct means 8. There are, of course, other ones. We've got sept for 7, but you're unlikely to see that. 10 is dec, but you might see it as dodecahedron. That one has not come up, but you might see that one and think, that's an exciting shape. Alright, so you've learned all about these fun and exciting things. It is time for you now to have a go yourself. Have fun, good luck, but yeah, you can mark them using your sheet yourself. See you guys later.